And now I'm running against somebody else, and we're leading. We're leading. So I'm not complaining. I'm saying what a stupid question this is. And they talk about, oh, the enthusiasm. Let me tell you, we have the enthusiasm. The Republican Party and me as a candidate. If you look at Martin Luther King, when he did his speech, his great speech, and you look at ours, same real estate, same everything, same number of people, if not, we had more.
A desperate, visibly confused, and visibly deranged Donald Trump just gave the worst press conference of his entire political career, in which, in one setting, he repeated all the mistakes of all the other disastrous press conferences, lying, lashing out at reporters, ranting about crowd sizes, comparing his to Martin Luther King Jr.'s, defending January 6th insurrectionists, praising foreign dictators, picking fights with Republican governors, and so much more. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. Friends, we have so many clips to talk about. This was by far the worst press conference that Donald Trump has ever made. Trying to pick the clips to show you. I mean, my God, we could be here for hours. So many. Let's start with this one. Donald Trump, of course, is a malignant narcissist, and he can't handle the fact that there's so much hype and energy behind the Harris-Walz campaign, and he loses his temper and lashes out at the press. How dare they talk about the Harris crowd sizes when his crowd sizes are so much bigger? Really unhinged stuff. Let's start with that.
Say it.
Are you worried at all about the size of Harris's crowds?
Oh, give me a break. Listen. I had 107,000 people in New Jersey. You didn't report it. I'm so glad you asked. What did she have yesterday? 2,000 people? If I ever had 2,000 people, you'd say my campaign is finished. It's so dishonest, the press. And here's a great example. I had in Michigan recently 25,000 people, and 25,000 people we just couldn't get them in. We had in Harrisburg, 25,000 people, and 20,000 people couldn't get in. We had so many. Nobody ever mentions that. When she gets 1,500 people, and I saw it yesterday on ABC, where they said, oh, the crowd was so big. I have 10 times, 20 times, 30 times the crowd size, and no, they never say the crowd was big. That's why I'm always saying turn around the cameras. I'm so glad you asked that. I think it's so terrible when you say, well, she has 1,500 people, 1,000 people, and they talk about, oh, the enthusiasm. Let me tell you, we have the enthusiasm. The Republican Party and me as a candidate, but the Republican Party has the enthusiasm because people want to see crime stopped. They want to see a country that's respected. Think of it.
So a couple of things. Donald Trump was, and shall always be an historically unpopular candidate. When he was president of the United States, he couldn't even crack 50% approval rating. After being shot in the head and enjoying whatever sympathy derives from that, he could barely squeak 40%. Even other conservative commentators like Dan McLaughlin and Byron York, they admit that Donald Trump is an unpopular president, an unpopular candidate. So he's in total denial about that. The energy's on my side. The polls are consistently showing him within the margin of error or losing to Vice President Harris. But see how he lashes out at the press, and he's so Freudian with this stuff. She has super small crowds. Mine was like 8 million times as big. And he even goes so far as to compare his crowd sizes to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s.
Never see the picture of the crowd. The biggest crowd I've ever spoken. I've spoken to the biggest crowds. Nobody's spoken to crowds bigger than me. If you look at Martin Luther King, when he did his speech, his great speech, and you look at ours, same real estate, same everything, same number of people, if not, we had more. And they said he had 1 million people, but I had 25,000 people. But when you look at the exact same picture, and everything's the same because it was the fountains, the whole thing, all the way back to from Lincoln to Washington, and you look at it, and you look at the picture of his crowd, my crowd, we actually had more people.
So he has to go out of his way to further alienate moderates and independents by, again, indulging in this weird Freudian crowd size thing, which, by the way, I don't know if you recall, but early in Trump's presidency, he sent out Sean Spicer, his press secretary at the time, who might be the worst press secretary he had, and that's saying something, to compare crowd sizes to President Obama's inauguration compared to Trump's, even though President Obama's inauguration was considerably greater. He just can't fathom a world in which he is relatively deficient, in which he is relatively less popular. Set aside the fact that he lost the popular vote in 2016 to Secretary Clinton. He lost the popular vote to President Biden in 2020 by 7 million votes. And according to projections, he's probably going to lose the popular vote this year, even if he wins by way of the Electoral College, which, as you know, is affirmative action for Republicans. But that is how unhinged he is, that he has to go out of his way. I'm not just better than every Democrat. I'm better. Jesus Christ couldn't pack crowds like me. If you read, the Bible, they talk about hundreds of people. I had 8 million people at a crowd. Martin Luther King Jr. So pathetic. Here's another clip of him lashing out at reporters when they point out that his campaign schedule compared to Vice President Harris's is relatively light. He doesn't handle it well.
You have not had a public campaign event for nearly a week now from Arlington, Montana, which is not a swing state. Some of your allies have expressed concern that you're not taking this race seriously, particularly.
What a stupid question this is. Because I'm leading by a lot, and because I'm letting their convention go through, and I am campaigning a lot. I'm doing tremendous amounts of taping here. We have commercials that are at a level I don't think that anybody's ever done before. Plus, in certain cases, I see many of you in the room where I'm speaking to you on phones, I'm speaking to radio, I'm speaking to television. Television's coming over here. Excuse me, what are we doing right now? She's not doing any news conference. You know why she's not doing it? Because she can't do a news conference. She doesn't know how to do a news conference. She's not smart enough to do a news conference. And I'm sorry, we need smart people to lead this country because our...
So I should remind you just a couple of things. So he's asked a perfectly fair question about his light campaign schedule. And what he effectively gives is an answer like, listen, it's not tactically wise for me right now to be campaigning. Maybe there's truth to that. Or perhaps the truth is it would be tactically wise of him to campaign to try to blunt whatever momentum that she has instead of just giving it away. Perhaps he even lacks the energy, whatever. But his excuse is right now, the DNC, the Democratic National Convention, is just a few days away. They're probably going to have momentum behind it, so I'm not going to waste my time. It's a tactical decision. Then he goes on to complain that Vice President Harris isn't making the rounds with reporters the way he feels he is. Well, isn't that also a tactical decision? We've done videos about this where conservative multimillionaire commentator Kevin O'Leary has been making the rounds to Fox News saying, guys, don't expect the vice president to go out of her way to engage with the press because right now she has the advantage. Why risk it with, some sort of, unflattering exchange or disastrous interview, which may or may not happen. Any politician is capable of it. President Obama, President Clinton, Donald Trump right now is having a disastrous exchange with the press. So the vice president's thought process is presumably, I'm fundraising the hell. I'm just beating the hell out of Donald Trump in terms of fundraising. I'm, either gaining on him or surpassing him in the polls. The energy is on my side. Why take a risk? So it's okay for him to make tactical decisions, but not her. If she does it, he says she's stupid, when in fact, it's actually pretty shrewd of her. Okay. Just absolutely ridiculous stuff. And then to go on with these personal attacks. She's not smart. She's not smart. I will remind you that we talked about this in a previous video. Recent polls show that whatever concerns voters had about President Biden's age and competence have now shifted to Donald Trump, the oldest presidential candidate in American history, 78 years old. A majority of Americans think he's not mentally fit to be president and that he's too old to be president and that he doesn't have the physical health to be president. So I'm not sure he wants to pursue this particular line of attack. And speaking of foolish lines of attack, here he is blowing the dust off of his rivalry with popular incumbent Republican governor of Georgia, Brian Kemp, governor of a swing state that Trump desperately needs to win. He blows the dust off it again and picks a fight with Brian Kemp.
I don't know. I don't know if I can or not. I got him elected. Without me, he wouldn't be governor. I got him elected. He was doing terribly. I got him elected. With that being said, I hope we can repair it, but if we don't, the people are still the people, and they're going to vote. We're leading in Georgia by a lot. We're leading in Pennsylvania by a lot. So, but I don't know. Now, in Pennsylvania, I have great relationships. In Georgia, I do too, but unfortunately not with the governor. I've never understood it. When you get somebody elected, they're supposed to like you. He's not exactly, for some reason, and you'll have to ask him about that. Yeah, I'd love to see it get repaired. I think that if we don't win Georgia, Georgia is a big win, is a big state. So I won Alabama by a record. Nobody's ever gotten that many votes. I won South Carolina by a record. You don't win Alabama and South Carolina by records and lose Georgia. It doesn't happen. And the people of Georgia understand that. There was tremendous anxiety and problems in Georgia. A lot of people say, what happened? And we have to, all we want is honest elections. If we have honest elections in Georgia, we have honest elections in Pennsylvania, we're going to win them by a lot.
As a reminder, Trump lost Georgia to President Biden in 2020. There were multiple audits and recounts and things like that. And as a matter of fact, the margin by which the president defeated Trump actually expanded as a consequence of those audits and recounts. They were like, actually, no, there are more votes, about 500 more votes for Biden. But again, he can't help himself. You know, he'd go on to say in that same press conference, he's like, I don't know why, if you get somebody elected, I don't know why, why they turn their back on you. You're supposed to be loyal. Well, perhaps it's because, number one, Brian Kemp, for all of his faults, is a conservative, right? He actually has conservative values, although I would argue his policies suck. But he's a conservative, whereas you are a malignant narcissist and ideologically inconsistent populist who will gleefully throw conservative principles under the bus for the sake of political expedience. Perhaps it's because you have tried to publicly and privately bully Kemp and his staff, Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger. Perhaps it was because you tried to steal a free and fair election that you freely and fairly lost. And perhaps for a brief moment, Brian Kemp was more loyal to the Constitution than to you, even though you're a deranged cult leader. And I'll also say that Brian Kemp, listen, I'm not here to lionize him because the guy still bent the knee and said he's going to vote for Trump in the upcoming election because he's a Republican. And damn it, we have to put person above party above country. So yeah, Brian Kemp is indeed, I would argue, a loser in certain respects too, but it's politically foolish of Trump to pick this fight. It gives him nothing. All it does is potentially alienate a vital ally whom he needs. He needs Kemp more than Kemp needs him. Couple more clips here. Again, we could just be here for days. I mean, this is Trump, he insists in that last clip, by the way, that he's leading in Georgia. I should point out that he's within the margin of error. I think the aggregate polling has him up 1 percentage point in Georgia. That's a margin of error that could easily slip the other way. Same thing with Pennsylvania. Some polls have Vice President Harris ahead. Others have Trump ahead. He's not leading in them by a lot. But I want to play this clip too, in which, again, he denies reality and insists he's not complaining about the state of the election, even though he's been complaining about the election.
I'll tell you what. From a constitutional standpoint, from any standpoint you look at, they took the presidency away. And people were saying he lost after the debate. He couldn't win. Well, I don't know that that's true necessarily. But whether he could win or he couldn't win, he had the right to run. And they took it away. They said they're going to use the 25th Amendment. They're going to hit you hard. Either we can do it the nice. I know exactly, because I know a lot of people on the other side, believe it or not. And they said, we'll do it the nice way, or we'll do it the hard way. And he said, all right. So that, I mean, they've really taken, what they've done is pretty incredible. And now I'm running against somebody else, and we're leading. We're leading. So I'm not complaining. I'm saying it's for a country with a constitution that we cherish. We cherish this constitution. To have done it this way is pretty severe, pretty horrible. You would have thought they would have gone out to a vote. They would have had a primary system. They would have done something. But to just take it away from him like he was a child. And he's a very angry man right now.
Yeah, so Trump insists he's not complaining while complaining clearly that he's not running against President Biden, against whom he would have a better chance of success. Again, so many clips I could point out. A couple of things, just kind of to recap. During the conversation, he praised Kim Jong-un. He praised Vladimir Putin. He praised the leader of the Taliban, talking about the negotiations that Trump, had with the Taliban in terms of the Doha agreements to get out of Afghanistan. He again asserted that somehow it was unconstitutional for President Biden to step down, to not seek re-election. Again, that's not true. There's nothing unconstitutional, unethical, or illegal about it. There's nothing unconstitutional, unethical, or illegal about Democrats, even if he's right, pressuring the president to step down. All of that, at the end of the day, Biden made a choice, and it was his choice to make. Nothing wrong with that. Trump just wishes he made a different choice because he thinks he would have a better chance against President Biden electorally than Vice President Harris. Another thing to point out is Trump is going back and forth on debates. He says that he's agreed to debates. First, he said on Fox, and then 2 on ABC. And then he got confused, and it required the Trump campaign to, in real time, clarify. He is proposing a September 4th debate on Fox News, an ABC debate on September 10th, which he'd already agreed to when President Biden was the nominee, but he agreed to debate the presumptive Democratic nominee. And then he's proposing a third debate, NBC, September 25th. So he got confused in terms of what he told the press. This press conference was disastrous. It really was. Again, we only showed you a fraction, the tip of the iceberg. You should definitely check out the full thing in its entirety. Lots to talk about. Let me know what you think in the comments.